It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Hello, you guys. How are you? Let's make sure I am broadcasting, because today we are going to do new member Q&A. Woohoo! The other day, when we did the regular Taxi TV on Monday, I actually noticed that there were a lot of new faces in the room. Hello, Bob Gunnerfelt. I noticed there were a lot of new faces, a lot of new names in the chat room, and I'm hoping some of them show up today so that we can answer some new member questions. And I'm happy to take questions from you old members that have been around for a while. But there are some things I didn't get to. I do a thing now called the New Member Zoom. Once a month, we reach out to all the people that joined Taxi in the last 30 days, and we do this New Member Zoom, where all the stuff that you guys have kind of learned over a period of a year or two being Taxi members and watching Taxi TV and taking part in the Quarantinis and going to the road rally and hanging out in the forum and all that stuff. We try and cram that into a 90-minute session that I do with new members, and people are really liking those. So I'm taking some of the stuff that I haven't had a chance to get to and making that into today's new member Q&A. Although right now I'm mostly seeing members that have been around for a while. But let me say hello to everybody. We've got Bob Gunnerfelt, Darren Fletcher, Beth D, Eric Anderson, Jacko Swag. Is it Jacko or Jocko? Jacko Swang, sorry. Reed, I always mess up your name, Reed. I'm sorry. Geisland, Lamar Pecorino, Martin Gravel, Jesse J. Peck. Hello, Jesse. How are you? Simon Burnham. Hello. Tony Salazzo. Happy new Quarantini. You betcha. Oh, the Zombies. There you go. I like it. The Zoom sessions for new members, they're Zombies. Hey, JP, how are you? Welcome back to the big Quarantini Happy Hour. Bubba Rocks. Guestland. I'll mess it up again next week, Reed. I'm sorry. I don't know why. First of all, yours truly had 4 hours of sleep last night. I was actually working on Taxi stuff until 1:49 a.m. Got into bed around 2:15, fell asleep just a little bit before 4 a.m., and then woke up at 8. So I am today. Guestland. Well, maybe we should change your last name and insert Guessst, Guestland. Anyway, my brain is not fully functional today. I get goofy and chatty when I am sleep deprived, so I'm going to be goofier and chattier than usual today. So let's get into some of these. Let me try and find some stuff that you guys, because it looks like we've got mostly, let me see how many people we've got here today. Not a very big crowd. So I'm guessing that most of you guys are actually members have been members for a while. I see a new name there. Samu Seamak? Or Cernak. No, Seamak. Hello. Let me see if I can find stuff. All right, here's a question. Does an edit point need to be like a full rest? And the answer is no. An edit point is a place that makes it easy for an editor, let's say a video editor, who is doing audio editing for the sake of dropping in an instrumental cue in a reality TV show, let's say. So they look for a place where they can cut it, because it's extremely rare, like almost never happens, that they would use the entire 90-second or 2-minute or 78-second cue. They use pieces of it just for a little bit of a scene. So, and my favorite, you guys know what my favorite is. My favorite example is making fun of Kim Kardashian. I saw an episode once where she couldn't get the cap off a milk container because she had super long nails and fresh nail polish, and she was trying to get the cap off a gallon milk thing. I'm surprised she doesn't have people that do that for her. But so they played dramedy music, some sort of goofy dramedy comedic music. And then I can't remember at the end, she either just shoved the gallon container to somebody else, here, you do it, or she dropped it and it spilled. So at the end, there's a boom, a sting, which is like a big musical exclamation point at the end. But obviously the editor couldn't use a full 90-some second cue because the scene may have only been 13 seconds. So they have to edit and make it short. And to do that, they need to cut it. Well, an edit point in a perfect world, there you go. Plin Bass joined October 2021. Well, welcome to the big show. King David, how much does Taxi take in the deal? 0. Taxi doesn't get any part of the deal. You get 100% of the money. Glad you asked that question. Anyway, so an edit point is anywhere they can edit. It's really hard, for instance, to edit like on a really legato string part or the ring out of something, because you could hear the volume change in the ring out on legato, even just a sustained note on any instrument. Those are really hard to edit. So you want stuff. As a matter of fact, here, I am going to play you. Tony Salato says in edit points when I'm about to say something stupid and stop myself just in time. Buttoned ending is when I start saying it and then stop halfway. That's really good, Tony. Did you stay up late to write that comedy? Because it was really good. Anyway, here, I'm going to play the longer version of the Taxi theme music that Keith LeBrant created for us about 1.5 years ago. And let's see if we can find some edit points. Right there. I mean, any of those. You could cut it on a downbeat of a guitar, you could cut it on a kick drum, you could cut it on a snare drum. But see, it'd be hard to edit over this lead guitar part. Because the lead would get all messed up. It would be an obvious edit. I'm looking for another one. But obviously, there are no whole note rests in here. But any of those snare beats would be a good edit point. So all that said, you've still got to make it musical. You can't just arbitrarily edit in the middle of a music phrase without connecting it to another part of the phrase somewhere else. Somebody once told me, always observe the rule of reciprocity. Meaning whatever you cut out of, you've got to have something to cut into. So there you go. I was actually told that when I was editing 1/4-inch tape of a 2-track mix back in the day, and I was scared to death to make the edit. And it was actually Tom Dowd, the legendary record producer, was standing over my shoulder, watching me go, with my hands on the reels, going, rocking the tape back and forth on the head. And he's like, come on already, cut the damn tape. I was like, I'm scared. He goes, you can always put it back together. And that was the first point he made about the rule of reciprocity in editing, is that when you make that cut, you can always put it back together. So especially in the world of non-destructive digital edits. Speaking of Tommy Dowd, I got to jump up and grab a prop. I'll be right back. I was cleaning out a book cabinet about 20 minutes before the show started, and I found this little gem. Tom Dowd and the Language of Music, right? Yeah, Tom Dowd and the Language of Music. I haven't opened this one. I've got an open one at home. It's a DVD. Tom Dowd is a legendary record producer that I had the extremely good fortune of working with very early on in my career for a couple of years. Worked with Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Eric Clapton, Otis Redding, John Coltrane, the Allman Brothers, Tito Puente, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Cream, Rod Stewart, Leonard Skinner, Booker T and the MGs, and countless other musical luminaries. So Criteria Studios in Miami was his home base for a lot of his work. Excuse me. And that's where I started my career as a 19-year-old kid. So I got to learn from this guy on a daily basis, and he taught me how to edit quarter-inch tape. He taught me about the rule of reciprocity, and taught me about edit points. So there you go. Anyway, you should order that. You can get it on Amazon. Tom Dowd, D-O-W-D, and the language of music. If you want to learn really cool stuff from a master of the craft, he died years ago, probably 7, 8, 10 years ago. But all of us who knew him loved him. He was unbelievably generous with all the great stuff rolling around that brilliant head of his. What is a developmental arc? I didn't talk about that in last week's new member Zoom. A developmental arc is taking an instrumental cue, generally speaking, is different from an instrumental. An instrumental is kind of laid out, the arrangement and the structure like a song, but without a vocal. And then because you don't have a vocal doing the melody, you'd put in what I call melody light, which is taking some sort of instrument, but don't do every note that a vocal melody would do. Otherwise, it comes out sounding like a Mantovani record or 101 strings. It sounds pretty cheesy. But if you just put in ding, 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 just like a note on the ones of every measure or something, and don't fill in all the blanks. Anyway, that's an instrumental. An instrumental cue is generally 60 seconds to 120 seconds long. 90 seconds-ish is about the average, I would say, for an instrumental cue. And it's just one thing. It's just an A section, sometimes maybe 50% of the time or more. There's a B section in there, which I say is very similar to a bridge from a song. And usually that's like a 4-bar, 8-bar section that's somewhere in the middle of the cue, and it just gives a little variation. So if the editor is editing pieces of that to fit into a scene, they've got something other than this repetitive stuff. So a developmental arc is a technique that you use to keep an instrumental cue from sounding very linear and boring. And you start out maybe with like a simple drum turn. Here, I'm going to play Keith LeBrand's thing again. Listen to how it starts with just a quick little drum turn. So that way you've got the attention. If you were using that to open a scene as a video editor, boom, it bangs right into it. And then it goes into something, and not necessarily this, although it does, but a cue would go into something that would be the same thing repeated over and over and over for 90 seconds with the possibility, decent possibility of a B section in there added for variation. But how do you keep it from sounding all linear and boring? Well, it's by stacking instrumentation, not information, stacking and layering instrumentation. So you may want to start out with just like bass, drums, rhythm, guitar, and then 4 bars later you introduce a piano part, and then another 4 or 8 bars later you introduce a conga drum or something, and then you drop it back down to the skinny version of it that you opened with, and then build it back up again, and then go into the B section, which is kind of like a bridge, and then you come out of that and you go through the building up, and out process. So this is something, hopefully this will show up okay. There you go. So here's the beginning of a cue, and notice how you can see how it's building. It's the same piece of music repeating over and over, but notice how it builds. So that's a developmental arc. Somebody once said to me, well, I thought an arc would be, like the Gateway Arch or whatever it's called in St. Louis. It's not. It's like a story arc in a movie. It just means that it's going somewhere. Also notice, I just noticed when I held this up, there's an obvious edit point that you can see in that waveform. Great place. Here's another edit point, because it's a section. So you know there's going to be a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, a guitar hit, something in there at the beginning of that section that lets you cut. So if you wanted to, and I would be willing to bet that probably this section right here is probably the B section because it's about halfway through. So if you wanted to, you could go and it's hard to do this in reverse. You could, let's say this starts with the drum turnaround like the Keith LeBrant piece. You could actually have the drum turnaround start right there and start your portion of the cue that you need right there rather than going through all this stuff where it's building up. If you want to bang it in with a more full production, bang it in right there. And you want to get out, then there's an edit point right there. So you go to the stinger ending, which is here. Let's see if this has a stinger ending on it. Ding, 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 ding. Whoop. That's a stinger. It comes back to the tonic, ends on the downbeat, which is how most of them work. Not 100%, but many of them. So a stinger is an exclamation point. It's got a little boom to it. Whereas a buttoned ending might be more applicable, is the right terminology, if you were doing a solo piano piece, or something that doesn't have a lot of dynamics, but it does end. It's just a hard ending. It doesn't fade. So it ends on the one, probably on the tonic, and that is a buttoned ending, but a buttoned ending with personality and an exclamatory vibe is a stinger. Some people would say it's a sting out. So there you go. I hope that explains. Get my stuff organized here. Rolf Shield, hello from Germany. How are you, Rolf? Good to see you. First time I did an edit on 2-inch tape was a very scary moment. Fortunately, I had good training. I got to say, I loved cutting 2-inch tape. Those of you who are old timers have heard me play the Melanie Ballroom Streets record. Ply and bass. If you want to check out my handiwork when I was in my late 20s, I think, Google Melanie Ballroom Streets. I did that record with a full band, sometimes as many as 8 pieces live, no headphones. We used floor wedges for monitors. It was a room that was 25 feet wide, 43 feet deep, if I remember correctly, with like 20-foot high ceilings. And we had the band play live, doing the whole double album, start to finish, every night. And we had an audience of roughly 30 people sitting around on the floor partying while the band was playing this show. So ultimately what I did after recording night after night after night of that show with a different audience, but as you can imagine, it was very challenging keeping the sounds the same and the levels the same, because I knew before I started that record that what I would be doing would be taking the best sections of songs and using those, hence cutting 2-inch tape. So we had tons of reels of 2-inch, and then we spent an entire day going through all those reels of 2-inch, going, okay, on the song Buckle Down, the first chorus was the best of all the choruses on that song that got played, best first chorus. So we would pull that out. Intro was great from night number 3, so we would use that intro. The first verse was really good from night number 4. So I had all these pieces of 2-inch tape, had to cut them all, and then as that double live in the studio album was getting played back, you'd see the edit tape go over the heads. It was just one giant edit. But the cool thing was, it was almost entirely a live performance. Sometimes even the guitar solos were played live. Melanie's vocals were almost entirely live. She was playing an acoustic guitar and singing simultaneously with the full band, which was a combination of like acoustic grand piano and a synthesizer, two electric guitars. One of them was going through a Leslie, oftentimes, not all the time, bass cabinet in the room, direct bass, real drums in the room, and recording all that stuff live, but doing it so meticulously that I was able to capture the live performance and vibe and some of the acoustic properties of them all being live in a room, but keeping it controlled enough that I could mix it easily later on. But the editing on the 2-inch tape, wow, was that challenging but fun, and I became pretty good at editing. It was a real patchwork. Really, really loved working on that record. That was probably my greatest engineering feat. I didn't produce it, but I did engineer it and loved every minute of it. People often ask, what about the listings that say Direct-to-supervisor? What does that mean when I see that? Well, many of our listings come from production music libraries, which, as many of you know, means that it is a film and TV specific publishing company that has a combination oftentimes of instrumental cues, as I described previously, or songs that are sync friendly, and we can talk about that in a little bit as well. So, hold on, what was that question again? Direct-to-supervisor. But we do get listings from supervisors, music supervisors who are looking for music, and they don't take a piece of your copyright. They don't take any ownership of your song. They don't share in anything. They just say, hey, I need to license this kind of song for that scene in my movie. So that's what it means, is the forwards are going directly to the person, the music supervisor on that project. If it's a film, the music supervisor is ultimately going to present what they found and they think will work in particular scenes to the director of the film, who's usually the final word in movie land. In TV land, music supervisor often presents the stuff that they've found that they think will work. They'll present that to the executive producer of the show, often called the showrunner, who is kind of the CEO of that TV show's production. So that's what it means. Let's say if you got a placement in a TV show and it was a $2,500 sync fee and you're signed with a production music library, most deals, not all, but many or most of the deals would be a 50-50 split, meaning that if there's a $2,500 sync fee, that the publisher gets half or the production music library gets half and you get half. And then if you see a listing that is for direct-to-music supervisor, there is no publisher in the middle of that. So if you own 100% of that master recording and you own 100% of the publisher share, which you do, and 100% of the writer share, assuming you haven't assigned those rights to a publisher, you get to keep the whole $2,500 if that was, the sync fee for a particular scene. So direct-to-supervisor listings are really, really popular with our members. Sometimes we get a lot of them we'll get a period where we'll have quite a few of them, and then it could dry up for a month or two. Kind of depends. COVID has made things a little squirrelier in that regard. They're more challenging to get a placement because when you're pitching your stuff to a production music library listing, they may be looking, let's say they're looking for dramedy cues, instrumental dramedy cues. They may be looking for 3, 5, 10, 20 of those. So let's say that we forward, 31 dramedy cues from a taxi listing for that company. They may end up signing 20 of them. The chances of them signing all 31, probably not that great, because there will be some that will be too similar to others, some that just don't get them excited. They don't think that they would work right for the shows that their clients are doing. So they pick what they pick, and that's that. Why was I talking about that? Remember, I had 4 hours of sleep last night. And the night before, I had coyotes till 3 o'clock in the morning, right outside, literally right outside the windows of our house, howling at the windows. And the night before that, or 2 nights before that, I also had coyotes. So I am extremely sleep deprived this week. So I was talking about direct-to-supervisor. I don't know. I think I covered it all, right? Okay. What happens after my song is signed to a production music library? Well, there you go. That's a great question. So Taxi runs a listing for a library. Again, I'm going to use the example of dramedy cues, which are usually like kind of oftentimes pizzicato, maybe some sort of mallet-driven instrument like I don't know, marimbas or a celeste or something used in conjunction with pizzicato strings. Sneaky stuff like you would hear on Desperate Housewives. You know, somebody's sneaking around the bushes trying to grab a peek in the neighbor's window and you hear doo 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 doo. That's an example of dramedy. And there are a whole bunch of variations on that theme. That's your basic dramedy cue. So, I forgot again what the hell I was talking about. So they run a listing for a dramedy cue. Taxi gets in 278 submissions. From that, we forward whatever is on target for the listing, stylistically and above the quality line. Remember, it's never a competition. You are not, oh, well, his cue is better than her cue, so let's forward his. No, it's not a matter of whose is the best. It's everybody who is on target and really good gets forwarded. So let's say, I don't know what I said, we forwarded 17 or something of those. And now the company on the receiving end goes through the 17 and they sign 9 of them. And more often than not, those 9 things get logged into their catalog. They get uploaded to their website. They get uploaded to all their internal hard drives at their office. But it's not like they pick up the phone or send out an email like a traditional publisher on the record side of the industry would do. Hey, everybody, I just signed a great new song by John Pearson. It's an awesome country song. They don't do that. They wait until somebody reaches out to them and says, I need dramedy, hip-hop influenced dramedy. And they search their own internal database, or they may search their catalog on their own website, and they go, okay, so I've got 7 hip-hop dramedy things. They listen to them, making sure that they're the right vibe for what that show asks. They don't just go by the description that it's hip-hop dramedy. They actually might ask the supervisor, what show's it for? And then they'll go watch little pieces of the show to get, find out if the kind of hip-hop dramedy that show uses would be like serious, kind of tension-driven, like something's going to happen dramedy, or is it comedic dramedy? There are different varieties, as I said. So they get the right vibe and they go, okay, so out of the X number that we've got in our catalog, I'm going to send them this one, that one, that one, and that one because they really fit the aesthetic, the musical aesthetic of the show. And they send it to him. And then the person, usually in the case of a reality show, it's the video editor that makes the choice. In the case of, like a 60-minute show on NBC, that's going to be more than likely the music supervisor working in some conjunction with the editor and then getting it approved by the executive producer. Man, my stomach is very noisy right now. I just ate lunch. So hypothetically and in reality, you get all excited. You got a piece of music forwarded by Taxi. It goes to the company. The company could turn around and reach out to you tomorrow saying, hey, this is great, Bob. I'm interested in signing it into my catalog. Do you have more of these? Can you make more of them? And then you deliver that music and then you're sitting there, it's like watching paint dry. Well, you've got my music. Isn't something going to happen? And the answer is most of the time, no. It will just sit there until the day where somebody reaches out to them and says, I need this kind of music. what you got there. And that's when they go through that process of looking at their own catalog, making the best choices they can, sending it off to the person who requested it, and then it's got to make it through that person recommending it to the executive producer or whomever, and then it gets into the show, and then hopefully that scene doesn't get cut from the show, and then your music makes it onto the cue sheet. The cue sheet goes to your performing rights organization in the form of, in America, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. And then 6 months later, 9 months later, sometimes a year later, you're going to get your PRO statement, your quarterly statement, and that use of your piece of music that started out with a forward from Taxi is going to show up and you make money. So there you go. Hope that explains that. Whew. Let's see, Train D Records, getting ready for my very first submission to Taxi. I'm sure everyone remembers their first. Do you have a quick checklist for best results with your A&R people, still learning what they need? The listing descriptions are your checklist. And honestly, I'm glad you actually used the word checklist, Train D, because I'm looking around. Liz, can you print out a listing and bring it in, please? I'm trying to think of where I would have one on my desktop, but I don't. Just any old listing. And I'll show you how to make a checklist from one of our listings. Yes, you should double check to make sure your levels are healthy, not wimpy and not so loud that they're distorted is kind of a good rule of thumb. Make sure that if the listing asks for an instrumental, you actually send an instrumental. Make sure if it asks for a song with lyrics by a female, that you send a song with a female vocalist. You'd be just shocked. Not only do a lot of people miss the genre, but people miss, if it asks for female vocals, people send in songs with no vocal at all, commonly known as an instrumental. People will send in stuff with a male vocal. People will it's like anything they can get wrong, somehow they do. And I'm thinking that maybe they just get so excited when they read that first line of the listing that asks for XYZ kind of music, and they go, I've got XYZ kind of music, but they don't look at all the particulars which are built into the listing. So when Liz brings me down that listing, I'm going to read one that I probably haven't looked at in days or weeks, and I could have gone to my own website and looked at that. Duh. But I know that some of our more productive and more successful members will actually bullet point a list of attributes that they kind of put together from a listing. And that's their checklist. But yeah, make sure that if it says, come on in, Liz, make sure that if it says that they're looking for this or that, thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's one. Orchestral-based dramedy. There we go. Dramedy instrumental cues are needed by a very successful music licensing company that lands placements on hundreds of shows on major networks every year with distribution in North America and Europe. Companies on the hunt for instrumental cues in the general stylistic ballpark of the following references. This listing, I believe, is actually coming out tomorrow. I remember seeing this one earlier today. So it's got 4 references. So one thing you should do in your checklist is listen to the references. And don't just listen to 30 seconds of them. Listen all the way through. And remember, they're not asking for a clone. They don't want something that sounds just like it. They want something that if these 4 references were on a playlist, would yours fit seamlessly on that playlist with these others and not have anybody go, oh, well, that's a little different from the others? That's kind of where the references are your best friend, is triangulate what they all have in common. Well, they're all, in this case, it's orchestral dramedy stuff. They've all got pizzicato strings. They all sound like it's a full orchestra doing pizzicato. Not every instrument playing it, but you know what I'm talking about. It's not a string quartet doing pizzi. It's a full orchestra. They might take note of the tempo. They might even note things like, they've all got like a medium amount of reverb on them. couple of them have a tuba in there playing the bass part. So those are things that you might look at and go, okay, those are the common attributes that I should build into mine. Are they looking for you to clone the melody? Hell no, definitely not. Don't be a stealer. Don't break the law. Are they looking, if this were a listing that had lyrics in it, are they looking for another song with lyrics just like that? No. But what's the topic of the lyric? Let's say a song is about, I miss home. I'm heading home. I'm going home. I can't wait to get home. Obviously, home is the theme. So if you had a song or you're going to create a song, the lyric theme could be about, I'm heading home. That doesn't mean you're not stealing anybody's lyric. You're writing another song about that topic, okay? And if it had a female vocal and if it were intimate and sounded nice and close to the microphone like that versus out here, those are the little nuances that can get you closer to capturing that vibe, a word we love here in California. Those are all the things that you should pay attention to on the checklist. So there you go. Kyle Johnson says, getting ready for my first submission. Listing says you need to be a member of BMI, ASCAP, etc. Currently do not belong to these groups. Is there a preferred one to join? Do you say tomato or tomato, Kyle? Here's my personal opinion from my own observations running this company for 30 years and knowing a lot of members really, really well. Some people really like ASCAP. Some people really like BMI. I remember a period that started 2 or 3 years ago where all of a sudden BMI we would have cases where two taxi members co-wrote something, and one of them was a BMI member and the other one was an ASCAP member. I do remember a period that started a year, 2, 3 years ago, I've lost track of time, where the people that were signed up with BMI as their performing rights organization were actually getting significantly bigger checks for the same placement on the same song that they co-wrote with the ASCAP member. Now, I don't want everybody to go, oh, Laskow trashed ASCAP. He didn't. That's just an observation that I made. And there have been plenty of times over the 30 years that I've been running Taxi where ASCAP has changed their calculation or their algorithm or their rules of how they calculate the money. And there have been times where everybody was like, oh, ASCAP is better. The bottom line is they're both good at what they do. There are some years where it seems that one may be better than the other. And if I had to call it right now, I would say that right now, BMI seems to be the one that more people prefer. But I used to have a very dear friend named Ralph Murphy, who was like a senior VP at ASCAP in Nashville. And he often said to me, ASCAP's board of directors are all songwriters and publishers. BMI's board of directors are all broadcasters. The broadcasters want to pay the creators the least amount of money possible. This is Ralph talking. And of course, ASCAP having a board of directors that are songwriters and publishers, they want to get paid the most. So there was some truth in that. I couldn't argue the point with Ralph. You couldn't argue with Ralph on something like that anyway, because he's always right in a good way. But I've also heard plenty of examples of late where, the co-write situation where one of the co-writers is ASCAP, one's BMI, and the BMI tends to get more money. It will shift again at some point. Something will change, and at some point, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, ASCAP may be the preferred one for a while. So there you go. Marion Laird just got home. Sorry you're late. It's all right, Mary. No demerits given. Frank OG says, hi, new for the last 2 months, not submitted yet. When submitting, does it need to be mastered? It does not have to be mastered. Frankly, unless you're really good at using mastering software, you may be better off not mastering it. People can suck the life out of something by overmastering. And if a library, when we forward your stuff, we forward a high-res MP3. If they want a WAV or an AIFF, they're going to ask you for that once the relationship has begun. Once they've heard your music, decide they want your music, have some sort of contact, either email or phone call with you, and then they may say to you, I want a WAV file and I would like you to master it. It's not a requisite, and like I said, unless you're really good, probably shouldn't do it. And some of the libraries actually master stuff before they put it up because they have kind of a signature sound or a certain level that they'd like to adhere to for all their releases, so they may actually do mastering. Do you have to have lyrics? If the listing says, please include lyrics, do include the lyrics. Sheet music, never. Nobody ever asks for sheet music. And we're back to the checklist. So I have in my hand a listing that I believe is coming out tomorrow. Orchestral-based dramedy instrumental cues needed by a very successful music licensing company that lands placements in hundreds of TV shows on major networks every year with distribution in North America and Europe. Company is on the hunt for instrumental cues. I talked about getting in the stylistic ballpark, using the references to kind of triangulate the vibe of what they're looking for. Don't rip anybody off or copy it or clone it. Please submit. So these are the things that I would make like a bullet point checklist, or at least highlight them, in the paragraph and make sure that you get this stuff right. Could help establish a playful, dramatic mood in a reality TV series. Okay, so playful dramedy cue might be, those shows where they've got like a basket full of puppies and they're all rolling a ball around and falling all over each other and just being adorably cute. So that would be a good example of where a playful, dramatic, like, ooh, and there's little Spot and he's falling all over his sister. So that's where they would use a dramedy cue. One of many places they would use a dramedy cue. So you already know that it needs to be playful and have a certain amount of drama built into it, hence the word dramedy. Drama in comedy. Craft your cues around a singular motif. In other words, it starts out as one thing and stays with that. Don't try and score a film because their scene is not going to match all your scoring moves or mood changes. Stick with one mood. Keep it playful from the beginning. Create a sense of forward momentum. That's what I was talking about earlier with adding layers as you go. Build it up, drop it back down, build it up, drop it back down, build it up, and boom, big finish with the stinger, the musical exclamation point. Create a sense of forward momentum and dynamics. We even tell you what to do by layering instruments in and out as they progress. So there you go. So that's another thing on your checklist. When you listen back to your thing that you're going to submit, before you submit it, does it have a sense of forward momentum or is it just laying there like a lox? Something like a drone cue, which is probably just something as simple as an omnisphere pad, that's not going to have forward momentum. But a dramedy cue, a rock cue, a pop rock cue, a hip hop cue, most cues should have a sense of forward momentum. A drone, that's not going to have a lot, right? Those are really hard for the screeners to listen to because you got to sit there and listen to 90 seconds of This library is open to hearing lighter, quirkier pieces as well as slightly darker cues. So there you go. Light and quirky, darker. Make each of those a bullet point. You don't have to have both, but you could have one or the other or some combination of both. Check out the references to hear what we mean. Did you actually listen to the references all the way through? A range of instrumentation could work for this request as long as orchestral elements remain a focal component in your arrangement. So might you have, a nylon string guitar in there? Potentially. Might you have, a Les Paul in there? Potentially, as long as you've got the orchestral stuff. So the other stuff could be a little bit of salt and pepper. If you take it too far out of what would normally be heard in the dramedy cue area, you might be hurting yourself. But by pushing the envelope a little bit, like 15%, maybe you're helping yourself, because they probably hear it when they ask for orchestral-based dramedy cues. Everything is going to have pitsy strings in it, right? So what can you do to make yours sound familiar? Because yours too has pizzicato strings in it. What else could you add? Could you be doing that same pizzicato part on a slightly distorted Strat going through a Fender Twin, and just mix just a hint of that in with your pizzicato strings? Yeah, you could. So there are things you can do. Just add a little salt and pepper so that somebody might go, oh, that's cool. That doesn't sound like the other 120 I've heard. But again, if you make it too far outside, they're going to go, whoa, no, that's not really dramedy. It's too weird. So don't try and be a trailblazer so much as somebody that just adds a little salt and pepper. Please be sure that your production and any virtual instrumentation you use are high quality, modern, and fresh. So again, another bullet point on your checklist when you listen back to your thing. Do my strings sound like they came from a sample library that was created in 2004? Or do they sound pro and really good? Your submission should be about 90 seconds to 2 minutes long, give or take. So again, it doesn't have to be exactly 90 seconds or exactly 2 minutes. It could be 84 and a half seconds. It could be 1 minute and 38 seconds, just in the range. But they're not looking for 4 minutes, and they're not looking for 15 seconds. Duh. So make sure that your running time is good. Non-faded button stinger endings will work best. Talked about that before. So those are all the things that, and broadcast quality is needed. I should do an entire show on broadcast quality. The short version is people think broadcast quality means stellar, spectacular, pristine, beautiful, professionally engineered recording. Sometimes that's true. Other times, if you're doing early Bob Dylan, it sounds ratty. The recordings weren't that good, but they were appropriate for that style of music. So broadcast quality is a moving target that changes with the style of music. Something that's lo-fi, like lo-fi hip-hop, is not going to have a lot of top end on it, but it's not supposed to. It's part of the vibe of that type of music. If you're doing a pop piece, that's like what you would hear on an Ariana Grande record, that would be slick, well-engineered, incredibly well-mixed, well-produced. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum, and think of like Tom Waits at the other end of the spectrum. In the end, you ask yourself, is the audio quality appropriate for this kind of music and right enough and good enough that it could be used in the context of a TV show or movie and sound like the other stuff that's in there, where nobody go, ooh, what a terrible mix, or what a terrible recording, or that vocal is so pitchy. You could have the most pristine, most beautifully mixed piece of music with a vocal that is pitchy and shouldn't be. If you're Neil Young, pitchy is cool. If you're Tom Waits, pitchy might be cool. Your Ariana Grande, pitchy ain't cool. So for the type of music you're doing, if the vocal is pitchy, that is a black mark against your overall broadcast quality. So there you go. It's kind of hard to describe, but in the end, is it good enough and appropriately mixed and appropriate sounding that it could work in a broadcast medium, like a TV show or a movie, which wouldn't be necessarily broadcast. All right. Okay. Oh, here's a question. Recording, this is from Kyle Johnson. Recording the sound from my 88 key Kronos, which I believe is a synthesizer. Should I be putting microphones on my Kawai Grand instead? There are incredible piano samples out there. Just so you know, in case you don't know me well yet, I'm a retired recovering engineer, producer but it's been a very long time since I've worked in a studio. But I have worked in some of the top studios in the country. I've worked on some big records. Engineering is a passion of mine. Production is a passion of mine. All that said, even with some of the greatest piano samples that are out there today, and oftentimes now I find myself not being able to tell if it's a sample or if it's a live mic'd piano. I mean, let's face it, the samples were a live mic'd piano. But sometimes they're recorded with the mics really close, and it's a more strident sound with more attack, and that might be inappropriate. That particular sample or that library's approach to sampling stuff might not be right. If you're doing cocktail jazz, for instance, you wouldn't want, like an MS pair of microphones mounted like this. There you go. Hard to see that on screen. 10 feet out from the piano with the lid open. It's going to sound a little too roomy. Then again, if you were doing an ethereal, light little new age piece or maybe a classical piece, maybe you want the sound of the room and the whole instrument, so you would use like a stereo pair pulled further back. If you're recording Elton John, you're going to probably, because he plays hard, which means the piano's naturally going to sound a little brighter, you might have the microphones 8 inches from the strings. If you want the sound to sound more pronounced and get a little more attack, but your player isn't hammering the strings like Elton John, you may want to get 4 inches from the strings so that you can get that up-close sound. It all depends. So all this to say that there are samples that do that. Don't use the wrong sample for the wrong application. If you're doing a pretty solo acoustic new age thing, I would not put the microphones 4 inches from the strings. If you're doing Honky Cat by Elton John or something like that, that's got a lot of really staccato, hard-hitting, full-handed parts in it, I wouldn't mic that from 12 feet away, but I wouldn't get too close either. So, split the difference. Do it maybe 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, a foot, somewhere in that range. Also, something I've said a million times in these shows is when you're miking a piano, a grand piano or a baby grand, some people tend to put one microphone all the way down by where the left hand would be playing, where the bass strings are, and the other microphone all the way over there at the top end of the high stuff, the top octave. But everything's generally played in the middle octave, somewhere a little north and a little south of the middle octave. Maybe some salt and pepper going on, with your left hand and your right hand out there in the outer reaches, but most of the time the stuff is going to be played in the middle octave. So why not mic the high and low end of that octave? Because that's where the sound is going to be articulated from. So stereo miking right there will give you a great sound. I think it's so fun. Marion's very hung up on being late today. Let's see if I can find any other questions that I've accidentally missed. I've been wanting to run my electric fiddle through a Pod XT to see what I could make it sound like. I think that would be a fun experiment. Elliot says, Michael's on to me, Omnisphere pad. That's everybody, Elliot. Excuse me. One listing, this is another question by Kyle. I'm glad you're asking all these, Kyle. One listing says I need to submit a photo and a bio since I'm new to the biz. My bio is mainly performing and teaching. Is that a put off? How pro does my photo need to be? That's a great question. Okay, so you should look like this is what a music publicist told me, like big time music publicist told me this years ago. You should look like your music sounds. So do they want to see a picture of somebody sitting there staring at sheet music? Wow, you're a really accomplished musician and you can read sheet music, but you look like my 8th grade English teacher? That's a turnoff. Should you put on a long-haired wig and put on a fake tattoo and a leather vest and some chains and try and look like you're that guy? No. It really depends on the type of music that's being requested. And is it a record label? I've told this story dozens of times that we had some guy years ago that submitted a shirtless picture of himself with the guitar strapped on, standing in front of a tall road rack full of gear. Like, check me out. Look how, here I am, shirtless. I own a guitar and a big rack of equipment, so that makes me really cool, right? Record labels? No. It does not. So it really depends on the scenario. There is no one size fits all. Don't make it look like a high school yearbook photo. Don't make it look like something you're not. And definitely don't make it look like you are, a high school English teacher. They don't want that. They're looking for, again, it depends. Is it a label looking to sign an indie artist? Then look on Spotify at album covers of other indie artists that are in your ballpark as the sound of you as an artist. If it's country, it's going to require a different kind of photo. Should you put on, one of those nudie suits? Remember him, the cowboy, sequins and very, very colorful outfits that a lot of country stars used to wear. Maybe they still do. No, it's pretentious. Flannel shirt, pair of jeans. Yeah, that doesn't look inappropriate. If you're doing jazz, I don't know what to tell you. I have no opinion, not that I don't love jazz, no opinion on what jazz people should look like. Maybe put on a Jaco Pastorius mask. Let's see. Tony Salazza, you are on a roll today, Tony. Country photo equals indie photo plus a hat. Well, Kyle says, great feedback, thank you. It sounds like I should get a variety of pro photos. I write everything from new age piano to hip hop and funk. If you're submitting instrumental cues, they don't care what you look like. Most of the listings that would ask for a photo are companies that are looking to sign artists. Now, some of the production music libraries like to sign artists because they think that it's kind of a credibility thing when they're pitching their music. Oh, this guy's an actual artist. I don't know. I guess it doesn't hurt. I think ultimately people pick the music because it sounds right in the scene and elevates the mood, amplifies the mood, or the emotion in the scene. I think that they would choose that first and not be influenced by what you look like or how you dress or how pro your photo is. Don't go out and spend $1,000 hiring a pro photographer. Just go on Google, look at some basic information about good lighting. Look at my incredibly good lighting. But I've learned a lot about lighting on Google. Not Google, on YouTube by watching videos. So, you don't want to look flat, pancakey, have no, I've got slightly more Slightly more light on this side than I have on that side, so it gives my face a little more depth, but I didn't overdo it. I also had to light myself so that I look in league with, if you will, with the recording studio sitting behind me, which is green screened in. You have to light the green screen so that you don't get weirdness when you're trying to key yourself out against that background, all that kind of stuff. Or key yourself in. So all the information you need really is on YouTube. Don't go spend $1,000 and get a shot of you wearing, like a cowboy hat, and then another one of you wearing like a hip hop looking outfit with, a pair of 3/4 length pants that are down below your butt crack. If you're not that person, it's not authentic. Don't try and do that. Everybody can see through a lack of authenticity. Photographs make it really easy. Like, look at me, I'm all hip hop. Ain't that cool? No, I am like not hip hop, and there's no way I could be hip hop or ever look hip hop. So yeah. Kyle Johnson, this is great. I'm fired up. Yay! I saved a life today. All right. Well, believe it or not, our hour is up. I can't believe it. That flew by. All right. Maybe we'll continue this next week. Maybe for a quarantini. I would like to do at least one quarantini a week. For those of you who have never attended a quarantini, it's something we started when the first lockdowns happened in March of 2020, and we were all isolated at home, many of us alone, and we just started hanging out, having these sessions that were a hangout with some educational and fun worked into them, and they became a thing. And I just can't stop totally doing them because I like the people that show up all the time, and I think we all have a good time. So there you go. I want to mention that Monday's Taxi TV, I don't really have a title for it yet, but there is a gentleman who did a review of his year on Taxi on YouTube. He was reasonably fair and even-handed, but he also stated some stuff that I didn't believe was incredibly accurate. And then a couple of weeks later, I don't know if he was prompted to do so by Taxi members that were viewers. I know that Greg Carrozza somehow corresponded with this guy. Greg is one of our regulars here in the chat. Somebody who's also joined the ranks of the really up-and-coming members. He's working very hard and getting real traction. So somehow Greg Carrozza connected with this guy, and the gentleman whose name is escaping me at the moment because I had 4 hours of sleep. Anyway, he interviewed Carrozza 2 weeks later. At first he said, I'm not going to be renewing my Taxi membership when he did the first video on YouTube. And then a couple weeks later he did one, goes, why I'm renewing my membership. So he rethought it. And one of the reasons why he's renewing his membership is he came to realize it wasn't Taxi's fault or the industry's fault that he wasn't successful using Taxi in his first year. He just didn't do a whole lot of music, and he also didn't submit music that was crafted for what the listings asked for. Any successful Taxi member will tell you, anytime you take pre-existing material from 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 60 years ago, and you go, well, this song is a female country song, and just leave it at that, which are not enough criteria to match to make a good pitch. And people do that, and they're basically pitching square pegs at round holes, and then they get frustrated at Taxi. But then when they think about it, after their membership has lapsed and they don't come back, and they go, yeah, I probably didn't give Taxi a fair shake because I was pitching funky old material that I really, and my heart of hearts didn't think was going to work anyway. Duh. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot something. We're going to go 5 minutes long today. Liz was kind enough to put together a bunch of links for books I'm about to recommend. If you are a new Taxi member and you haven't seen the new member Zoom for your month, I want to recommend some books for you that are must reads. Okay? These aren't like, that'd be cool if you got it. These are like read these books and have your life changed for real. Drop $100 on these books in total, and you will be light years ahead of the people that don't read these books and don't belong to Taxi. So, the first two books I'm going to recommend are Demystifying the Genre and Demystifying the Queue. They are written by a successful, very successful Taxi member named Dean Krippain. I love him dearly. I've known him for 20-some years. I can't still spell his last name correctly unless I'm looking at it. Krippaehne, Krippain, or as we like to call him, Dino. Anyway, if you want to get into the creating instrumental cues for television, mostly to some extent film, you have to own these books. You should own both of these books. This one is the skinnier of the two, so people might favor this. And also, it's got links to where he's talking about a cue. Here's this guy, here's a dramedy cue. This is what it sounds like. And you can click a link and listen to it while you're reading how he composed it and produced it. Excellent book. It's a must-have. Demystifying the Cue. This is kind of a general overview of the TV instrumental cue business as a whole. Also, indispensable, gotta have it. Another one of our successful members, great guy also, named Steve Barden, Barden. Writing production music for TV by Steve Barden. Incredibly thorough book about everything you want to know about creating music for TV. Production music in particular, right? Okay. So there's that. I know you guys are leaving now because I say goodbye and then remember the books. Shortcuts to Hit Songwriting by Robin Frederick literally became like an overnight classic. I am the publisher on this. I make a couple bucks if you buy one. If you don't think the book was worth every penny you paid for it, send it back in resellable condition. I will refund your money personally. People love this book. It's not the kind of book that you have to read cover to cover. It's the kind of book that if you're writing and you hit writer's block or you hit a stumbling block, you just can't find a good rhyme, or you can't think of, should I go with this structure or that structure? Whatever your problem is, this book has a solution that's easy to find in the table of contents. People love this book. And Robin Frederick will be my guest, but I can't remember the date right now. Shoot. Hold on. I have my calendar nearby. Robin Frederick is going to join me. Oh, Eric Copeland is the guy that's going to join me on Monday. I know I wrote Robin in there somewhere. Okay, Robin Frederick is going to do song critiques on Taxi TV on February 7th. So don't miss that show. The woman who wrote this book, people love her. They're amazed by her. She is an incredible teacher that just... I've been in the business for close to 50 years. Every time that woman opens her mouth, I learn something. And I think I know everything because I've been around for so long. Dinosaurs have an incredible history. And then this book, which has a see-through cover. It's not. It's green. It's the same color as my green screen. So that's why you can see through. Anyway, Shortcuts to Songwriting for Film and TV. There is no other book on the market anywhere that talks about writing songs for film and TV. Writing songs for film and TV is not the same as writing songs for radio and records. Yes, there could be some overlap, but there's a whole technique and a different mindset for writing songs that will get used in film and TV faster than other songs will. So if you are a songwriter and you'd like to get your songs in film and TV, buy this book. Sorry to say, it won't come with the see-through cover. It'll have lime green where that is. Okay, that's it, you guys. I will see you on Monday for the show with Eric Copeland and I. And don't forget, on the 24th of January, we're going over to Paul Reed Smith's L.A., their secret hideaway showcase room that is in a compound that has rehearsal stages for really big bands. Sometimes these big bands, big rock stars, just walk into his room full of guitars and hang out. So who knows? Maybe we'll get visited by a rock star the day we're there. That is Monday, the 24th of January, live from PRS's private showroom in Los Angeles, where you're going to see some amazing guitars and meet my friend Win Kozak, who is Krozak, sorry. Just an incredibly cool guy. Anyway, that's it, you guys. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for hanging out. Welcome to you new members. Glad you guys made it here. We will see you on Monday for Taxi TV Live.